52 speakers. The next item is F5, which is on legal fees. We have 3 speakers, Mr. Chair. Maddie Adotto, you're up.
Go, Maddie.
So again,
Payne, you're on deck, and Mrs. Chair.
we're going to attempt to try to do these in three minutes
quick.
if possible. Okay, thank you.
One of these is something that the board is giving Dr. Brand the power to authorize any of these legal forms, and how much can he authorize without board approval? That's one of my questions. And then I'll email Karina, because I'd like to know a total that was paid to each of these law firms to date. But my biggest question is, how much can Dr. Brand approve without board approval for any of these law firms? Thank you.
And to follow up on that, many of these, if not all of these, were on the list last year. And I too have been reading grand jury transcripts, which some people are referring to as your biographies. So I would simply suggest to you this: you know, when you keep hiring the same firms, that's when you start having cover-ups, because you never get anybody else looking at the information. And we have all seen some questionable legal opinions coming from some of these attorneys that you have solicited. So I'll give time for someone else.
Mrs. Cheers.
When Bill McLaughlin was first brought back, or first hired, he was hired as AD $30,000. Then a few meetings ago, you hired him because he was going to be the new compliant officer. To my understanding, it was because he had a law degree. I now see where you're looking to hire the law offices of Christopher Harvey for compliant matters. So my question to you is, what are we paying Bill McLaughlin for? Do you board members know? Mr. McCann, you are unbelievable, and this story is going to make you look ridiculous.
Okay, I would entertain a motion in a second. Regarding legal.
So moved for discussion.
Do we have a second for discussion?
Second.
Okay, Mr. McCann?
Yeah, I just wanted to put on record that I want to put on record that I think it's time that the Sweetwater District look at hiring an in-house counsel. I think when I look at the list, I think there are sometimes lawyers on there that may not have an actual conflict of interest, but maybe a perceived conflict of interest. And I think that we need to make sure that we have a general counsel that is employed only by us, not other competing municipalities, and that is somebody who directly reports to the board. Thank you.
With that, call the question. The motion passes 3-1. Mr. McCann, no, and Ms. Lopez, absent.
Mr. Chair, G4 is our next item. We have 2 speakers, Mrs. Adotto and Stuart Payne, and it has to do with the PSAT.
I just have one quick question on that. Do students have the ability to opt out if they do not want to take the PSAT?
Yeah.
They do have and it would be a savings to the district if they opt out, or do the parents have to opt out, or how does that work? Because I know I didn't have a choice when we had the PSAT.
And then Mr. Payne.
Yes. You know, I'm not quite sure what we're spending $87,000 for. I understand the PSAT and all of that, but this thing is talking about Ready Step, which is a link on College Board and College Board, and that the students get a free login by using it. That's free. You don't have to pay for that. Anybody can go to College Board and get a login and access these things. So I understand that we are paying $14 for the test. That makes sense. But the rest of this, I don't. Please question it, somebody. That's all I'm asking. It makes no sense. College Board is free.
Any other speak? No. Okay, so, Mr. Carmel, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, Ready Step is 8th grade, PSAT is 10th, 11th. It's designed to have kids do well on the SAT. Over the years, you can go up 150, 200 points. There is a reason why we have over 1,000 kids accepted to San Diego State. It's not random chance. We've had success with this. We'd encourage you to continue it, respectfully submitted.
But it's free.
Motion to
It's
approve?
free.
I second for approval, one final comment, and in terms of cost, I think it's a legitimate question to ask that, and I totally understand, I think it's an excellent program, but if we could get a little more detail just for the record.
Why don't we send it home in a Friday update? Mr. Payne can call or email. We'll get back to
If we
you.
can send it to, I appreciate it, thank you. Call the question.
Please vote. Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
G5, Mr. Chair, is our next item. It has to do with options secondary community day school waiver. Mr. Payne, speaker.
You know, my only comment on this was, this thing, you're approving something that took effect a year ago. So this thing is for 2 years. The first year, the school year is already done. So did we have a school site council or didn't we? This thing, you're approving something that's to take effect a year ago. Makes no sense.
Okay, there's no more speakers, to entertain a motion.
To approve? So
Do we
moved.
have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, please vote. Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
Item G6, Jupiter grades. We have 2 speakers, Mr. Payne, Mrs. Cheers.
Jupiter grades, a wonderful thing, a very good thing. My daughter had Jupiter grades, and we used to get emails all the time from her teacher, or one of them anyway. But the problem is, not every teacher was using it. Only 2 of my daughter's teachers was actually using it. And you even say yourself that we have 500 teachers using it. And we got, almost 1,800 teachers. That's about 29-30% of the teachers that are using it. So if we're going to spend $63,000, why doesn't we make it, everybody use it, so I can get all of my daughter's grades instead of just 2 of them? Makes no sense. Either it's worth it or it's not. Thank you.
Mrs. Cheers.
I agree with Mr. Payne. We're paying the teachers. This is something that they should be doing. We come to you before about this. Why aren't they doing it? You reprimand us for what we do wrong, and if we're wrong, we accept it. So bottom line, every teacher needs to be using it. If they can't use it, find another teacher. Thank you very much.
So, Mr.
So moved?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Call the question.
I will call the question, but I have a quick comment from staff I'd like to see, not in the Friday update, but sometime in the future. What kind of training is done on Jupiter grades? Because my opinion as a parent, there needs to be a balance. Some teachers send way too many emails, and others don't send any at all. And so you get this out of whack, kid that's worried about, 20 emails, in a week versus another class where you don't get any. So I'd like to see the training thing. Okay, call the question. Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
K1 is the next item. We have 3 speakers, Mr. Payne, Ms. Adato, and Ms. Cheers, and it has to do with consultants over $5,000.
Yes, by my calculations, I think we have South Bay Community Services down for a couple $1 million, at least 1 point something. I didn't add them all up. One contract 606, another one 563, another one 226. Isn't there someone else that can provide these services? I've heard a lot of things about South Bay Community Services, some good, some not so good. I don't understand why we're throwing all the money right at them. And the other thing I might suggest, I don't know why Ms. Quinones has to recuse on this, but it's probably because she's either on the YMCA board or something like that. Maybe we make a policy, board policy, that you don't serve as a board member on a organization that does business with the district. That might solve some problems in the future. Thank you.
Ms. Sadotto? Ms. Sadotto, you're up. Ms. Sadotto, you're up, and Ms. Shears, you're on deck.
Page 5 of 38. For Susie Mitchell, is the 40,000 an entire year's salary and that's it? There's no other salary after that? Page 9 of 38. Why would we hire someone temporary when we could hire someone in personnel to fill the necessary void on this item? This is the accounting services. And I also have concerns about South Bay Community Service. It seems like every month on the agenda, and I know, Pearl, you have asked for it, I know we have asked for it, a summary on how much we are paying South Bay Community Services. Because every month on the agenda, it just adds up to millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I don't know where the money's going.
I agree with what Ms. Sadotto said, and I think we need to take the bull by the horns and contact the people that run these programs or fund these programs and send them a couple newspaper articles. But additionally, in the transcripts or somewhere in the last week or so, I received an email regarding a superintendent who was on the WISE board, and they had asked all of the principals to donate to the Y. I guess to be on the board, you need people to donate money. So I agree with Mr. Payne. If you sit on this board or have anything to do with this district in a leadership capacity, right up there, or right here, that you should not be on that board. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cartmel, members of the board, and ladies and gentlemen, just a couple thoughts. One, the consultant contracts regarding the South Bay Y, the district received approximately $2.8 million in grants this past year for after-school programs. Most of those programs are funded through the Y and South Bay Community Services. As you'll recall, approximately a year ago, Mr. Leyva had a very extensive RFP that went out to approximately 10 agencies. The schools individually interviewed all those agencies, selected the ones they thought best aligned with what they were trying to do. The fact that those two organizations oftentimes are the winners because the schools have had a successful experience. We are inviting them to an upcoming board meeting, I believe it's July or August. August board meeting, so that they will be here to address any issues that you have. But this is important work. We're a year-round district, and because there are so many contracts up right now, is because we're starting a brand new year. Respectfully submitted.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Although, what,
Recusing the
Page
items.
31.
okay,
32
so
and 33.
a motion excluding 31, 32, and 33.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Okay.
Okay, now I'd entertain a motion. That motion passes 4-0. Ms. Lopez absent. Now I'd entertain a motion for items 31, 32, 33. Is that correct?
So moved.
No.
Oh, sorry.
The 31, 32, Pro needs to recuse.
Okay, she
31,
did on,
32.
okay.
So moved.
Just on items 31, 32.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes 3-0. Ms. Quinones recused, Ms. Lopez absent.
No, we need 32.
Okay, now, item 33. Do we have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes 3-0. Ms. Picasso recused, Ms. Lopez absent.
Mr. Cartmel, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, next item is M1. Has to do with the construction spending for new construction. We have three speakers. Jerry Thomas, you're up. Mr. Payne, you're on deck.
My name's Jerry Thomas, and I live right next to the ROP, the former ROP. ROP closes down on Friday. Stephen Hawking shows up on Monday. You've destroyed the baseball field. Nobody knew that was coming. I went out and I told the neighbors about it. And they looked at it, and the first thing they said, that's criminal. And to the neighbor that they said, that's criminal. No, why is it that nobody knew about that? Well, where did Stephen Hawking come from? I've been to all the past meetings and nobody knows. I grew up in the Wyoming Valley of Pennsylvania. God, country, family, and football were very important to us. And I grew up in an extremely Catholic family. One of the most important canon laws in the Catholic faith is Haec Consensere, which is Latin for silence gives consent. We all know that one of the 10 commandments is do not bear false witness against your neighbor. What you might not know or understand is that you can bear false witness by not saying a word. Think of all the things going on in this world around us. A lot of people don't like what they see, but they don't voice their protest. Silence gives consent. Silence gives consent for very hideous crimes. Penn State is a recent example. Half my family loved Penn State, half of them loved Notre Dame. They went to all the ball games. The horror of Penn State is beyond comprehension. What went down in that place of higher learning used silence as their tool to allow this to continue since 1994. By the spring of 1998, the following know about the crimes: the Pennsylvania State Police, the State College Police, the District Attorney, the Second Mile Attorney, the Department of Public Welfare, and the list goes on and on. Silence gives consent. What I am asking is how they could react this way. Silence gives consent. The lesson of silence gives consent is never remain unspoken. Define yourself with words. Individual citizens are responsible that government is good. If the government is ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, is it because people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption?
Mr.
Put
Payne,
your
you're
3
on.
minutes on the agenda next
Mr.
time.
Marinovich, you're on deck.
You're disgrace.
Sir, your time is up, you cannot speak.
You gotta let the people know you only have 2 minutes. I planned this for 3 minutes.
Sir, from now on, 2 minutes until we can get,
Why didn't you put that on the agenda, Mr. Cartmill?
Mr. Payne, please.
Yes.
Answer me.
I'll be brief to consider my fellow community members' passion. So I won't quite go 2 minutes to make up for his passion. But, you know, I'm just looking at this and I've heard a lot of discussions. Oh, by the way, I'm glad to see that you're doing something with the Benita Vista High School track. That's a good thing. But the rest of this, where you're just kind of moving stuff around, is confusing to someone, not me, of course, but to someone who, and I'm not trying to say that I'm super smart, but I read this agenda quite a bit. So for someone who doesn't read the agenda, it could be confusing. So just more clarity, and when you're explaining these things would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Marinovich?
Let me be actually positive. I think we've had progress in having information given to the Bond Oversight Committee in advance of actual board decisions. We just found out at our committee last Wednesday, and I found out prior to that, that some of the money that was committed to Propo was for iPads was rescinded and came back and goes to a reserve fund in Propo rather than being funded with bond proceeds. That was, I think, would make many of us happy on the Bond Oversight Committee. But I would encourage, on this agenda item, I guess was the best one to speak, is to, if you got anything that is potentially controversial that you think the Bond Oversight Committee, even though we don't approve the expenditures and say yes, we'll have to bless everything, from a PR and just good government standpoint, I would recommend that you have staff inform the committee in advance of any significant expenditure items so we can know about it. And I'm looking at this long term. This is just one example of this kind of item where, you know, a year or 2 years from now, this can be a lot different around here, I have a feeling. And, you know, we may in the future want another, who knows, another bond issue I've heard about from the west side. And I'll be candid with you, it's gonna go nowhere unless you get the support of the Bond Oversight Committee that's looking at this program. So it's kind of the kind of thing, as we move forward, that I think it's important that we look for ways to make, embrace the Bond Oversight Committee rather than being viewed as enemies. So there's no particular item in here I wanted to pull, but it was an opportunity to make that comment. Thank you.
No more speakers?
I'd entertain a motion.
Motion?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
We have item M2, which is the consultant agreements affiliated with the building program. Stuart Payne is the speaker.
Again, I'll be brief. But my question was on if someone could shed some light or have staff shed some light on the $144,000 for an inspector at Montgomery High, when the other inspectors are like $14,000. That one is $144,000 in my mind. That requires some explanation. All the inspectors are fairly low, except for that one and the solar projects, which I don't quite understand why that's coming out of Propo. And that is it.
No more speakers? Yeah.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Yeah. I'm sorry, there wasn't a second. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
Need to take one more out of order. Case 7, which has to do with the security. Mr. Payne would like to pull that out.
Oh, yes.
Another question unanswered.
Mr. can't vote on that because I'm here during the presentation.
We're not talking about a whole lot of money here, $5,000. And no disrespect to JDS Security, but I just simply do not understand why we need security guards here, armed security guards at that. I've been coming here for 6 years. And yes, people come and they're passionate because they try to speak and they get ignored. You cut them off time. So, you can't expect people to, just accept that. But what amazes me is, if one of you board members get upset enough with a member of the public about the simplest of things, 4 police cars show up. So why are we paying $5,000 to have security here? They're not needed. It makes no sense whatsoever. Please, somebody, don't vote for this. It would probably not make a motion, but thank you.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Please vote. Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
Item M4 has to do with the demolition parking at Sweetwater High. Mr. Payne would like to speak to that.
I don't even know why you're speaking.
Giddy up there, go on.
Which item did you say, sir?
M4, the parking lot of Sweetwater.
I'm like Mary.
Don't look at John.
I'll pass, go ahead.
Okay, entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, Ms. Recosta, Mr. McCann, please vote. Motion passes 4-0. Ms. Lopez absent.
Item M6, we have a speaker, Mr. Payne, has to do with, I believe, Mr. Marinovich.
No,
Travel.
sports facility.
M6 is
Oh, sorry,
the,
my bad. Sports facility at Sweetwater.
okay. All right, and again, I'm all for the sports facility at Sweetwater, but you're kind of confusing me when you go back. I remember we've had this thing passed before, so I'm not sure if this is an additional 1.8 million, if it's the same contract, is it an increase? what is it? If someone could just explain what it is. And others in the community think that you've already put the field in and it's defective, so you're spending 1.8. I've got probably 6 phone calls a day about, I thought this was already done, why is it back on the agenda?
So, Mr. Payne, there's Mr. Calhoun, he'll fill you in, you can spread the word for us.
Okay? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
Second, Mr. Costa, second, please vote. Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
Item M8, Title IX softball dugouts at Castle Park High. Mrs. Cheers, you're up.
Yes, I was wondering if you could tell me, what is the total amount for this Title IX softball field? Additionally, I would like to mention that our Title IX specialist, Mr. Bill McLaughlin, that we hired for an extremely high amount of money, came to 2 of our BOC Phase 2 meetings at Montgomery. At the second one, he stated that he felt that it was going to be a Title IX issue, that the people at the girls' softball games were going to have to walk a few yards further than the boys, the people at the boys' games, even though we were providing them with a new gym as a restroom. I then, out of character, asked him what was he talking about. And he then came back and said he had done some research and this was going to be an issue. Now, we already paid an architect to do it, right, to do what we wanted to do, but then he comes back and says it's going to be an issue, so then those plans are thrown out, and right now we're looking at, with what he didn't really recommend, but in order to accommodate the girls having to walk a few more yards than the boys, approximately $600,000, at which I told the BOC at the meeting on Monday, then let the district pay for the Title IX issues. Mr. McLaughlin will not sign anything. Mr. McLaughlin could not give me the proof that I asked for. And so again, I say, why do we have Mr. McLaughlin? And if I could get, I'm just curious as to what the bottom line, if you have it, is for that Title IX issue at Castle Park. Because if Dr. Gondra, who you, Mr. Cartnell, and you, Ms. Ricasa, brought here, would have dealt with that issue way back when Castle Park High girls and their coach brought it to the board's attention, we would not be in the position we're in today. Thank you.
Mrs. Cheers, Mr. Calhoun would be a good resource to answer all those questions.
Thank you, sir.
No more items,
Okay.
respectfully.
So we have a motion by Ms. Ricasa, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, please vote. The motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
Mr. Chair, item M10, which has to do with the construction services site lease and sublease, we have Mr. Marinovich and Mr. Payne.
Final time. Thank you for letting me comment on this item. I was part of the evaluation committee for the lease back, and the Tom Calhoun had for this National City Middle School. And I just wanted to point out that one of the issues that the Bond Oversight Committee will be dealing with in the next year is taking a critical look at best practices as it relates to lease-back. Lease-back is a hybrid form of, it's a qualification-based selection, which is used by many school districts. And there have been some issues that have been covered in the media because it's not a pure, hard bid, that there's a potential for less than honorable activities. And I think that's a best practice item. I think it's important for us to look at. Me personally, I think we have to really, in this kind of environment, but when you don't have campaign limits and et cetera, that the potential for less than honorable activity exists. So I'm not saying that is here in this case, but I think it's something we really need to take a look at as a committee and as bond oversight around the state. It's somewhat controversial. So nothing against this item, but it's something you have to keep your eye on. Thank you.
Mr. Payne, you're up.
You know, the way in an ideal world, the way this thing works is, the public gets up and speaks, they give their concerns, and it affords you, the board members, an opportunity to ask questions before you vote. Having Dr. Brand say, go see Tom Calhoun, and the vote's already done,
Let's stick to the agenda.
that is the agenda item, because what good does it do me to stand up here and talk for 2 minutes? And in many cases, not just my own, but everybody gets up here, makes a rational argument, and Fast 80 goes, see Tom Calhoun next week sometime. Makes no sense. Back to this. Lease back, you guys know just as well as I do, that this guaranteed maximum price is supposed to be the maximum price. And you have routinely had lease back contracts that have exceeded the guaranteed maximum price. So I'm asking that you make sure the contractors, and I know there's some exceptions of, you know, different things, hazardous waste and those types of things, but guaranteed maximum price means that this $11.1 million is the maximum price. Thank you.
No more speakers?
Okay, is there a motion? No questions.
I just want to make sure that people understand Mr. Payne was a litigant against Belfour Beatty on one of our projects, and he lost.
Because of the board's contributions.
Okay, do we have a second?
Just like the reader.
Motion passes 4-0, Ms. Lopez absent.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, item N5, which has to do with floor coverings, we have a speaker, Mr. Payne.
Get up there, you loser.
Payne?
Just get up top.
Mr. Payne, it's N5.
Oh, N5?
N is in Nancy.
Okay, I was looking for N, I'm sorry.
Careful, Stuart.
And there's no more signs.